One of the most fundamental, basic, and maybe even more important rights is your right to speak freely, especially your right to speak freely as it relates to redressing your government and expressing your grievance against the government. But what if there was a group of people, a criminal cartel, let's say, who didn't want you speaking freely and would do anything and go to any measure to make sure you couldn't speak freely, to the point where they would want to get together and conspire against you and lock you in their basement for actually exercising free speech? That is actually happening. And before we get to it, let me just remind you what the First Amendment is. Congress, which is the opposite of progress, shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And that's what they did during the J6, you know what they call it. And this is the guy they're going after. And they frame him in such a way as, oh, he's America's villain, so of course the DOJ should go after him. And that's what's happening. Federal prosecutors are going after and seeking jail time for Owen Schroyer from InfoWars. Now let's just put on the back burner what you believe about Alex Jones and Owen Schroyer and InfoWars, just like I would ask you to put on the back burner what you believe about Donna Lamone or Jakey the Snake Tapper or CNN. Let's just assess this from a free speech plane, from the perspective of, hey, does this guy, far right, far left, intermediate, center, middle of the road, it doesn't matter. Does this guy have the right to speak his mind in a public place? The answer is yes. And how do we know that's the answer? How do we know that's the self-evident right of every human being? And not just in America, we have the Constitution and all that, but everybody's got a right to speak their mind. How do we know? How do we know that's self-evident? Because the person who's trying to silence you does not want his speech or her speech or that group's speech to be silent. Or silenced. That's self-evident. Nobody wants to be forced into silence. And that is what censorship is. It is the forcing by violence of a person who doesn't want to be silenced. You're forcing somebody into silence that doesn't want to be silenced. So this is from MSN. There's also this right here from the Gateway Pundit. I take Gateway Pundit, mainstream media, MSN, CNN, all with a grain of salt. The Gateway is decidedly right-leaning to the point where they have a bias. MSNBC or MSN, mainstream media, they have their leftist bias. But if you're biased toward a particular bent or a particular political spectrum, are you really a journalist? Journalists can't be biased. All they're there is to uncover the truth and to report the truth and then let the chips fall where they may. But we know that they're biased. Let me just show you an example of the bias before we get into the story. InfoWars host Owen Schroyer today pleaded guilty to a single Class A misdemeanor of entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds. And then it says the journalist was initially charged. Oh, wait a second. Wait. It's this one. It's this one that lets their bias show through. The highly talented journalist, again, this is from Gateway. The highly talented journalist, no bias there, was initially charged in August 2021. And this mainstream media article says, and we will see their bias, federal prosecutors are seeking jail time for a far-right media figure. What does it matter? Guess what? It doesn't. It doesn't matter if they're far right or far left. What matters is, in this context, in this country, in this nation, an American is being pursued by the Department of, let's call it what it is, injustice for simply speaking in a public place that's owned by the public, tax cattle money goes to upkeep that public place, and that just so happened to be the Capitol. So their story is federal prosecutors are seeking jail time for a far-right media figure who earlier this year pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of illegally entering a restricted area during the you-know-whats that you can't talk about, because if you say this right here, you trip off a bunch of censorship algorithms. InfoWars host Owen Schroyer didn't enter the Capitol grounds amid the insurrection, but led these kind of people right here, they say, in chants from an area near the top of the building steps. He pleaded guilty in June to illegally entering a restricted area. I wonder how much of that is true and how much of that is coerced into pleading guilty. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, okay, so you're giving me one or two or three choices and I'm forced to choose the one that's going to benefit me most and harm me least. And you got guns pointed at me and I've got jail time stacked against me and a criminal record and all that kind of stuff. Oh God, what do I need to do, Mr. Lawyer? Prosecutors are seeking 120 days in jail for Schroyer ahead of his sentencing schedule. Now, let's read the DOJ document. InfoWars posts it, and I'm going to use this because they underline it, but I do have it pulled up right here. This is the actual docket. This is the government sentencing memorandum in the United States versus Jonathan Owen Schroyer. So I'm going to read it from the Gateway because they have some of these things underlined. But this right here, just rest assured, this is this document right here in the months prior to January 6th and the months prior to January 6th. So we're going to read it right here. In the months prior to January 6th, Schroyer spread this right here, disinfo paired with rhetoric to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of viewers. He presciently warned in November 2020 that if Joe Biden became president, quote, it is not going to be a million peaceful marchers in the District of Criminals. And on J6, 2021, Schroyer took to a megaphone before leading a crowd to the Capitol. The Democrats, and they're attempting to quote him here, quote, the Democrats are posing as communists, but we know what they really are. They're just tyrants. They're tyrants. And so today, on January 6th, we declare D to tyranny, D to tyrants. And what is the motto of that's emblazoned on the Virginia state capitol? Sig semper tyrannis. And what does that mean? Thus always to tyrants. What's the thus? Well, we know what it means. It says, Schroyer did not stop at the sight of tear gas or sounds of explosions on the west side of the Capitol. He continued marching around to the top of the east steps, chanting 1776, where these people, they claim, I'm not even going to say that because I didn't see that. I'm looking through a lens that's trying to be objective here. Now, could you call them that? I guess so. But if you really intended to do harm, wouldn't you bring more than PVC pipes and flags and Trump hats? Would eventually violently breach the Capitol and its police line. Oh, let's not mention MSN. Well, actually, let's not mention DOJ because that's what we're reading here. Let's not mention that the Capitol Police actually opened the gates for them, opened the doors for them, stood aside while they went in, and then talked kindly to them when they were even in the inner rooms of those marble chambers, those hallowed marble chambers. Breach the Capitol and its police line and halt the transfer of presidential power, that illusory, imaginary, magical, mythical presidential transfer of power. Schroyer did not step foot inside the Capitol. He did not need to. This is the DOJ saying this. He didn't step foot inside the Capitol. Really, his bodily presence wasn't even there, so we're going after him for words outside on the Capitol steps? Okay, thanks for the admission, Department of Injustice. He did not need to. Many of those who listened to him did instead. In the aftermath, he has blamed Antifa and told his followers, quote, we should have been proud of what happened. And then it says, Schroyer helped create January 6th. Did Schroyer say that? Is there any indication that he intended to do that? Is there any evidence that he did do that? Or is this just them speaking out the side of their mouth? Because we do have an example of somebody who actually said they orchestrated it. And that's this guy who was never charged, he was never fined, he was never penalized, he was definitely never sentenced. And that's Ray Epps. What did Epps say? And this is a screenshot of this 60 Minutes thing where it says Ray Epps, the 60-minute interview. But look what Ray says here in a email to his nephew. That's Ray Epps, was in front with a few others. I also orchestrated it. Listen.
I was in front with a few others. I also orchestrated it.
So that's what 60 Minutes is reading. It's a text from Ray Epps. But you don't see the DOJ going after Ray Epps for 120 days in jail or 5 years in jail or 15 or 17 years like they gave Joe Biggs. Here's what Ray Epps says about that.
Explain this to me.
I was boasting to my nephew.
I was just okay, let's leave Ray. He was just boasting to his nephew. And he happened to put it in writing. And we got video evidence of him doing the very thing that we're accusing Owen Schroyer of doing, even though we also have to admit that Owen Schroyer didn't step foot in the Capitol. I was just boasting to my nephew.
I helped get people there. I was directing people to...
No, Roy, you said you orchestrated it. You said you orchestrated it. But they say, the DOJ, the Department of Injustice, says Schroyer helped create January 6th. You know what they could definitively say? They could say Ray Epps said that he orchestrated it. And now we're going to send him to jail. He's going to prison for the rest of his life. Nope. No mention of Ray Epps. No mention at all. The government respectfully requests that this court sentence him to 120 days of incarceration, take away all of his freedoms because he thought he could step on the Capitol grounds in a public place and speak his mind. How dare he, in concert with the First Amendment? What do you think this is, America or something? 12 months of supervised release and 60 hours of community service and $500 in restitution. Let's just see what else they say. I think, yeah. It just says that in the MSN article, it just ends with what I just read to you from the DOJ. So we've got Owen Schroyer, who spoke his mind as a journalist. Whatever you think about the journalistic organization that he's a part of, he's still a journalist. He's there. He's still out there, just like Donald Lamone or Jakey the Snake Tapper or Caitlin Collins or, name any one of your favorite fake stream CIA infiltrated Operation Mockingbird, MK Ultra teleprompter controlled puppets behind a newsroom desk. Name any one of them. They're just speaking the truth that they want you to hear. You have freedom of speech in America or you don't. And because Owen Schroyer happened to exercise his freedom of speech, the Department of Injustice decided to go, you know what? We can't really have him doing that. So let's go ahead and violate him. Let's go ahead and take away his rights. We are Owen Schroyer. We are Julian Assange. None of us collectively got up and did anything about Julian Assange because if we had, Julian Assange would not be in the position that he's in. Even Donald J. Trump, who gave credit to WikiLeaks for being in the position and in the lead position above and beyond Hillary Clinton, even shouting that out when he became president, WikiLeaks, I don't really know anything about WikiLeaks. He's questioned specifically about, I don't really know Julian Assange. I don't really know. He knows what he did. He knows what Julian Assange did. He knows that nothing to this day, nothing that Julian Assange said was wrong. Everything was corroborated. Everything was evidentiary. Everything was documented. And yet Donald Trump would not lift a finger to pardon or at least give asylum to Julian Assange. Didn't do it. He wouldn't pardon and didn't pardon. And when I say wouldn't, he knows about it and won't do it. Wouldn't pardon Ross Ulbricht. If you know anything about Ross Ulbricht, look it up. He didn't do anything to pardon Schaefer Cox, who literally did nothing wrong. These people are rotting in a prison somewhere, having not only done nothing wrong, but actually did their fellow humans right by stepping forward and speaking out. How about Edward Snowden? Nope. No pardon from Donald J. Trump. No pardon from Joe Biden. Why? Because they don't want to pardon them, because they don't care about freedom of speech. They hate freedom of speech and those who speak out with their freedom of speech. Same thing with Owen Schroyer. If we don't stand up for this guy, What does that say about us? And what does that say about our democracy? And I'm not into this democracy. I don't, this whole concept, this paradigm, I believe and agree with Benjamin Franklin. Democracy is two wolves and a lamb deciding on what to have for dinner. It's basically, according to Jefferson, it's a majority rule scenario, and that's not a scenario or a society that you want to live in, because basically what they're doing is the 51% decides to force into silence the 49% because they don't like what the 49% says. Same thing with Owen Schroyer here. Whatever you think about InfoWars or Alex Jones or Owen Schroyer or the message that they speak, you got to admit he's still a journalist. And if they were talking about, if the DOJ was talking about going after, name one of your, the first person that ever comes to my mind is Donald Lemon from the Communist News Network, or formerly of the Communist News Network, or Chris Cuomo. If they were talking about, going after or requesting a 120-day prison sentence for Chris Cuomo or Donald Lemon, I'd be saying the same thing. Hey, you don't want to do that. You may disagree with Donald Lemon. You may hate the organization he's a part of, but he's got a right to say what he said. And you can't put an end to that, because once you stifle that for him, you're basically saying, well, I won't mind if one day that boomerang of injustice comes out and lops off my tongue. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought, please. Try to separate yourself from what you think about InfoWars or CNN or the mainstream media, MSLSD or faux news. If they were talking about, as much as I can't stand these people, as much as I can't stand the Sean Hannitys of the world and the Rachel Madcows of the world and all the people who are distributing this information, they still got a right to speak. And if it's disinformation or misinformation, we have a right to speak to counter it, and made the best argument win. The answer to free speech is not limiting speech, it's more speech. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought, please, in the comment section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. I promise I won't spam you. I'm just going to get in touch with you if I upload a video and I need to circumvent all the other algorithms to do it, which amounts to probably 4 emails a month, if that, because I'm horrible about doing emails. If you want to support the channel further, grab a hard-hitting conversation starting design. This one right here is Domestic Terrorists, IRS. They've got what it takes to take what you've got. You can put it on any item in the store. The takeaway of this is this America or is it not? Do you have freedom of speech and freedom of expression, or do you not? Should we all constantly be in fear for our very safety and our freedom because the Owen Schroyers of this world are getting shut down and locked up because the government doesn't like what they say? Leave your thoughts. It really helps overcome the algorithms, and I'll see you guys in the next video.